Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee. I apologize for the voice. I'm a little under the weather this week. And we have with us TrainerRoad and Cannondale's Amber Pierce.
Good morning.
We also have our head coach, Chad Timmerman. Welcome back from the snowy mountains of Canada, Chad.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
He was skiing all week at Powder Creek Lodge, making me so sad that I was not there.
Wow.
And I know, right?
It was amazing.
Yeah, I know. Look at
Just
that.
saying.
Yeah. And he was with Pete too. Gosh dang it. I know.
And Jay Burke, the guy the race promoter for Point to Point.
Yeah. Jay Burke. Yeah. He's a super cool guy.
Or the race director.
Nice.
Sorry, director.
Yeah. What a cool group. And our CEO, Nate Pearson. Sorry, Nate. Got to you late there.
Okay.
All right. Today we're going to answer your questions. We're going to, I guess, consider the concept of gaining weight to get faster, which is an interesting one. It goes against all of our normal psychology as cyclists. We're also going to look at maintaining motivation amidst race cancellations. It's still happening, unfortunately, but hey, we can change things around. We're also going to look into fasting for various different reasons. So I know that a lot of people are interested in hearing that one. We tend to kick the hornet's nest when we talk about fasting. So, but before we get to anything on that, Nate, we spoke about legacy pricing. Was it two or three episodes ago?
I have two things to say, John. First, thanks everyone who went into the forum, and there's a thread about that, about legacy pricing. Thanks for everyone's opinion. And basically the vibe, the one that I heard a lot was, I stayed signed up when I normally wouldn't be signed up because I thought in the future I would have something. And then, so if anything else changed, I feel like you'd be going against that. Like I did my part of the deal kind of thing. So right now, nothing's going to be changing at all with pricing. So I'll let you know that. And also we talked a bunch about like different tiers, and it was really fun just to talk to TrainerRoad athletes and podcast listeners about different ways to structure the business and stuff. Of course, we take that with consideration with all the other information we have and everything like that, but I really enjoy it and appreciate everyone doing that. The second thing is my doctor doubled my Adderall prescription. So like this will be a good episode or a really bad episode. We don't know.
You just want to take it for me, Nate? I could go to sleep. That way, you have plenty.
I took it like 3 minutes ago, so it's going to take a while to kick in. You'll notice when it does. Don't worry.
Oh, good. We have some. Also, another thing I want to share is we have Spotify playlists. If you go look for TrainerRoad on Spotify, you'll likely find the TrainerRoad podcast, but you can also find like TrainerRoad, the artist, so to speak. And if you click on that, then you can go there, or I should say the profile, and then you can find all the different playlists we have. And we don't just have, we have playlists from Chad. I think there's one from me. Maybe Nate has one on there. I'm not sure if Nate does, but we have other ones too. And more employees are adding them from here at TrainerRoad. So like producer Maxine that always carries the podcast every week. Maxine is not a crit racing avid cyclist. However, she does like sad boy music. So she put together a playlist if you like to train to sad boy music. So there will be more added to this. We'll also have collaborative playlists that you can add on to as well. So go check us out there on Spotify. Check us out on Instagram. And thanks to everybody that's tuning in live on YouTube right now. Give us a thumbs up. That will make it so that other people give the video a thumbs up. Don't just like actually do a thumbs up to the screen. We can't see that. But thumbs up to the video. More cyclists will find it that way. Okay. Can we take a moment to talk about triathlon? The audience is largely in favor of me mentioning triathlon stuff every once in a while here, which that's good because cyclists don't tend to be too forgiving.
Well, I don't listen to the podcast. What happened last week? You talked about triathlon a lot?
Yeah.
For those who missed it.
Yeah.
Chad didn't listen either.
Yeah. No, Chad was in Canada. So
they get the podcast in Canada.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's a good point, Nate. Yeah, good point. Nate was like, sorry, Chad was very far out of service up in the mountains somewhere. So, okay. We just talked about like me learning how to swim. That was it really.
It's
right,
tough.
Amber?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very tough.
Amber gave me some great tips. And we just actually more than anything, Amber just talked to me. She didn't mansplain to me, which was, or I guess woman-splain in this case at all.
B1-splain.
Yeah. So, but we just talked about that. And we got a couple of people that were like, I can't believe you have ruined my only podcast that I truly love by talking about anything besides cycling or specifically talking about triathlon. But the vast majority of you really liked it. So Thomas, I know that you sent in an email. I'm sorry. We are going to talk about triathlon every once in a while, but you know what?
Skip forward.
Yeah, exactly. On YouTube, we'll even put like a timestamp so you can see where don't talk about triathlon anymore, and you can keep your socks high. So, but one thing that we need to talk about here is that a lot of people are asking, okay, so what race are all of you doing, or who else is doing it with you? It's just me, right? I don't think anybody else is doing triathlon.
You too?
No.
So I was going to, and then I got a divorce, and I was like, And then when I trained for so long and hit my head at Cape Epic, and that like went away, my motivation is still recovering. So that was a big bummer, and just taking a little bit of an off season at the moment. And triathlon, triathlon is demanding. But compared to it's a different kind of demanding than cycling, but it is very hard to manage all three. And yeah, it's hard. If you want to do a triathlon, you got to be committed, and you shouldn't go into it being like, oh, I'm like 60% on the way there. You should be like 80, 90, 100% on the way there if you want to actually do a triathlon, especially an Ironman.
Yeah, that's fair said. An Ironman is next level. Chad, no triathlon for you?
That's exactly where I'm coming from. I feel like the commitment has to be complete, or I'm wasting my time and everyone else's time. So my aspirations are elsewhere right now. The competitive fire in me isn't exactly stoked. I keep trying to do something on the competitive front, and nothing really seems to pan out. I am pretty interested in gravel racing, but at the same time, if I turn it into something that's competitive, I think it might sour me on the whole non-competitive aspect of it, the potential for it. So I still haven't quite landed on that, because the motivation, in order for me to find the right motivation to train as hard as I want to, in order to be as fast as I can be, I kind of need competitive aspirations. But at the same time, the competition kind of sours me on the experience. So it's a tough one. So anyway,
if I've ever heard one.
it is, yeah, right. But I'm more leaning into the strength side of things lately. Anyway, I kind of just go where my interests lie. I don't follow. I mean, we put these challenges up, and I feel like I really want to be part of it for the sake of the podcast, for the sake of the listeners, for the sake of y'all. But try as I might, doesn't seem to pan out.
Well, you aren't obligated to be anything that you don't want to be, Chad. Like that's the
You're Coach Chad. Stop.
Isn't that enough?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to do any of those races. Amber, and you're not doing triathlon either, right?
No, talking about commitment right now. I'm just trying to figure out how the path forward, right? And how this is all going to fit together being a new mom. So, but I'm with you all. I'm kind of similar, where I'd like to have an event or something, a goalpost in the future. I'm not sure what that is, because I also want to be realistic a little bit about any goal that I set. So right now the goal is just to get into a good routine and then see what might be realistic based on that. But we haven't quite gotten to the routine yet part. So
it's so tough. Chad, I am also getting swole. We can have our own swole contest now.
Swole,
like a different. Yeah. Should we do body? Like, which division of bodybuilding should we do? Classic?
Oh yeah.
That's where we're the board shorts.
Olympic weightlifting. So
I feel like Chad and I should have a challenge, but Chad will be pull-ups. That's what he'll say, because he's amazing at pull-ups.
No. It has to be something that neither of us is great at. So there's a legit challenge there.
I don't know. If anyone has an idea, put a comment down or in the forum about how, Chad, if we have just a little friendly thing going on, do you think that'll motivate you more?
For sure.
Yeah,
if we can keep it friendly.
Accountability buddies. It works.
Friendly
no, it's real.
Part.
It is. Nah, it's fine.
Oh man. I'm going to throw in some ideas under like a burner account because I don't dare present them myself.
Nothing that'll hurt my back, because that derails pretty much everything in my life.
Yeah, that's a tough thing, because I don't really want to get into powerlifting. I want to get more into like looking big. I don't need to necessarily because there's a different thing in weight training versus powerlifting. You can do I can't say the word.
Hypertrophy.
Yes, hypertrophy. Where you get bigger muscles, you do get stronger. But if you really want to be a strong power lifter, it's a different type of training, and it's a lot of neuromuscular stuff, and you still get big, but not as big. But there's risk of injury and stuff too. So
and not to split hairs, but I have no interest in powerlifting as weightlifting, which is, the Olympic lifts. Powerlifting is
weight training. Yeah.
Crazy heavy. And that's way out of my reach in terms of
the
fragility of my skeletal system.
I would be doing weight training with focus on overall just health, because I am getting older. I'm going to be 40 next month, but also looking good for dates. Both of those things are in my
Those are priorities.
Those priorities, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, we talked about having the why behind the goal. It's important.
That's right.
There we go.
You gotta know your why, then you go for it.
There you go.
But if I could add that now with beating Chad in something.
Nothing quite motivates Nate like beating Chad. It's a good motivation.
That's why I'm trying to organize.
I can be that carrot. That's cool.
Yeah. But he's sorry, we got to stick with this for a second. Chad's super strong, and he's super mobile, and he's really good at this stuff. You've been doing this longer than cycling, haven't you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this has been since junior high, I think, when I went from doughboy to football player.
We have good rapid fire questions for this later, by the way. This is great. You guys are setting the scene perfectly. I'm loving this.
I am so I've always been super skinny, what do they call ectomorph, and band. So when you're in football, I was in marching band, but I was carrying a tuba and it was pretty heavy. So anyways, somebody put something in because I really want to know. Okay, continue, John.
Yeah. Well, actually, I just wanted to, Nate, you were a triathlete. Some people may not know this, but you did triathlon before you started focusing on cycling, and before you started, and also while you were building up TrainerRoad initially. And then Chad, you have done duathlon, but you have also trained in the pool and stuff too. You've done a fair amount of swimming. And
I was on swim team in high school too.
I think Amber has done some swimming before. Yeah. I think Amber's done some swimming. Not really sure. Okay. So Amber, you spoke about something and I want to cover this.
Hey,
so
John, we should say this because there's new listeners. Amber was a D1 swimmer at Stanford.
And there's a whole podcast series that you can listen to where we break down Amber's career on the Successful Athletes podcast series. And I highly recommend that everybody go listen to it. Amber did a wonderful job of relaying her experiences.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. So
had a lot to do with the interviewer. Just throwing that out there.
Hey, hugs. That's good. So you mentioned something with swimming, and it's really proving true with me. So I shared a video of myself swimming, not under the water, but just above the water. I didn't have a GoPro with me. I lost count at over 200 people sending in telling me what to do from doing that. And the funny thing is I bet that if I put it all into a spreadsheet and categorized it, it would be 50-50 about conflicting itself. People don't let your torso roll at all. And then another person's consider it like a log. You're rolling through the water. Another person is you're bringing your arm up too high. Another person is you're not bringing your arm up high enough. So fair to say there are plenty of opinions and plenty of things that I can do to work on and improve my swimming, which is really apparent to me because I choke and just drink water the whole time. So I definitely know I can improve. But Amber, you've mentioned something that's really helpful. You were talking about an autonomic response that happens when we get into the water. Can you explain that a little bit? And then we can go into a detail on this.
Yeah. For most folks, unless you really grew up spending a lot of time in the water and kind of rewiring this, it's really natural for your body to react to this very unfamiliar environment. It's not something that we're used to. Gravity feels different. You're dealing with buoyancy in a way that you don't during the day or on a daily basis. And you can't breathe the way that you normally do. And all of those things trigger an autonomic response that gets your whole system focused on surviving. And when your whole system is focused on surviving, it's really, really hard to have space to focus on any kind of a learning process. So the biggest part of this, I think, when it comes to swimming, is less about the buoyancy and the shift in gravity, but it's more about breathing, because that's a really keystone aspect of being able to survive. So if you can get to a point where you feel really comfortable breathing and you can reassure your autonomic system that this is not a life and death situation, which it sounds funny to say that, but it's very true. If you've ever been in the water at a point where you felt like you maybe weren't going to be able to breathe when and if you needed to, it's a very serious response that your body will have to that. So this is something that you really want to get comfortable with. So I shared with Jonathan, I think it's really important to focus on breathing and getting comfortable breathing, because as soon as you can do that, then your brain will have the space and your system will have the space to focus on learning processes. And otherwise it's too difficult an ask.
Mm-hmm. Nate, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So I, in high school, I joined the swim team, and it was just because there was like a cute girl that I actually signed up for it. I didn't know how to swim. And
good motivation.
She turned out to be a Lake Ridge swimmer. So I didn't even ever see her. Like she wasn't ever there, which is funny. And I hated it. It was so bad. But I was not a good swimmer either. I could not swim down to the other side and trying to teach stuff. And then I did it for like a year and a half and I was never fast. And then I did triathlon many years later, and then swimming in open water or that long distance you have to do, I would get scared. I could just not do it. I had that same kind of experience where I did not feel relaxed and I was always tense in the water and like uncomfortable. And in my experience, the thing that helped me is I saw the total immersion video, and it's just like, you just see this guy just glide and glide. You don't go fast, but they just glide. And the techniques that he does, you're not going to be a fast swimmer, but it helped me get to this point that I started to relax. And I got to a point where I did relax. And then I had a swim coach teach me how to swim faster. And those were like the steps that I went through. Like swimming the regular swimming way, I never got comfortable with it until I learned how to glide. And then I combined the two where, okay, I'm going to glide a little bit more for triathlon, but also have the right technique and not have like a snowplow down in my arm and stuff like that. You have to do that snowplow to keep your hips up for total immersion. So it's faster than drowning like you are, but not as fast as like an amber swimming and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Chad, did you have any experience with this of like getting over that initial, because it's funny, it doesn't, so there's fear. This doesn't feel like fear. It just feels like an uncontrollable amount of tension in my body. I don't know if that makes sense, right? Like to people, but I'm not scared because, I'm in like 3 feet of water, but I could be in 1,000 feet of water. I wouldn't be scared. I know I can tread and I can handle that, but it's just like tension, and it just makes it so that I don't work as well. Have you experienced that too, Chad?
Yeah, I think the quickest and most beneficial get that I achieved along the way was kind of what Nate described. It did start with total immersion, but it really just kind of morphed into balance drills. And I found that by focusing on keeping my body balanced and properly positioned in the water so that I could glide and I didn't have to do as much work, the breathing started to take care of itself. Because at first I was focusing just on the breathing drills and my balance was terrible. So I just struggled to breathe the whole time and I wasn't really getting anything out of it. But then I shifted my emphasis to learning to be balanced in the water. The breathing came more naturally. And then I started to progress really nicely, actually. I wasn't swimming fast, like Nate said, but I was swimming far more efficiently than when I started.
You can swim for a long distance, I bet, right? Like you could probably do a 200 and not be like, okay, I'm done for the day.
Exactly right. Yeah. And it was very encouraging.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Jonathan, to your point, it's not something that's necessarily happening consciously, right? Because this is your autonomic system that's running in the background all of the time. And it's not something where you're thinking in your mind, oh, I feel like I'm about to die. No, in your mind, your conscious thoughts are, I'm fine. It's only 3 feet of water. I can stand up if I need to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your autonomic system is going to be in agreement. And that's where the tension, that makes a lot of sense.
This is, it's funny because I probably have spent many a minute, maybe hours telling Nate, like, Nate, just do this for technique on a mountain bike. Right. And Nate was kind always in saying that basically like, I need to focus on something else. Like what you're telling me to do is way over here. I need to focus on something else. And it's that level of, and Lee calls it arousal, right? Lee McCormick from Lee Likes Bikes, great skills instructor. We have a video on working together with him. And right now I think I'm just from a subconscious level, my body's not at the point where it can really learn well and apply things dynamically. That said, I've already seen like a good amount of improvement, and there are a handful of things that I was doing wrong that I've corrected that have really helped. So firstly, like I used to just go through like a protractor through the water, like 45-degree angle and just like push my way through the whole thing and then get exhausted really quick. But when I started swimming with this, I could get to the other side of the pool, but I would be very out of breath. I'd hold a pretty good plane in the water, be flat, and then I'd choke on water. Then I'd start to go into a snowplow and I'd be out of breath by 25. Now I can string together 100s. And then after 100, I'm out of breath. So that's better. That's like a whole lot of improvement that I'm getting. And a few things that I've done with that is I've really worked on rolling because that helps me breathe without just getting a mouthful of water, which is really helpful. Tucking my chin, just like you guys said on the podcast, is also helpful in this regard. It's like keeping my head down. But a few things I did as a cyclist, I was over kicking. I was using all my legs, right? and I was kicking like a champ, and I have big old quadricep muscles that probably take a ton of oxygen, and then I don't have anything else. So it's just pretty rough. So in that case, since I had that going, I actually used a pole buoy. I don't know how you would even say that word, but pinching that between my thighs forced my legs to stop working and stop kicking from up there. And it forced me to start focusing on like fluttering flippers of my feet, right? At a totally different level. So that was a big help, just to be able to operate at that level. That made it so that I was not as out of breath as quick.
I want to give you a tip, John, that I never knew for like all my triathlon. I only do triathlon for like 5 years plus swim team. No one ever told me this, is that your ankle is supposed to be floppy when you kick.
Yeah.
No one told me that. Like, I had them stiff, and I would do kick drills, and like 8-year-old girls would just be zooming by me. And I have big feet too. Like, I'm a tall guy. You think it would be okay. And then one day, I like at the very end of it, I like relaxed my ankle and it started to get floppy, and it felt like I had fins on, and I went so much faster. And then you can also work on ankle flexibility, where you sit like you kneel, but you put your feet flat. Like, I can't do that anymore, but it lets you have more flexibility there. So when you flop around, you push more water. Amber, is this all right? I don't remember.
100%.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. You want floppy flipper feet.
Yeah. At Masters Swim, that was one of the first bits of advice that I got, and it was fantastic. It helped so much. It was also funny because as a cyclist, we're just like so stiff in our ankles and stiff in everything. So I was totally holding them stiff, but then also my ankles were sore after that first day of letting them go loose. They were sore from just exploring that range of motion repeatedly. Right. It's just so funny how bad we are. Chad's shaking his head. He's embarrassed that I'm a pupil of his, that it's so immobile. So that was really helpful. And I'm learning a whole lot of other things, but the one thing I'm learning is that I need to spend time repatterning that response. And that comes with reps. That comes with time in the water. And if currently it's like a traumatic experience, it's not exciting to go to the pool. It's like, great, I get to go drown for a while. And, but hey, after a while, it'll stop feeling like drowning. That's the goal. So, but anyways, that's where the swimming side is. On the running side, I just want to cover this really quick. I worked with a couple coaches, and I realized that I have been studying like triathletes and looking at triathlete form rather than looking at running form from runners. You know what I mean? It is different. Have you noticed it, Nate and Chad and Amber? I don't know if you've looked at it, but like even really good triathletes don't necessarily look like really good runners in technique. Not all the time.
Best runners do. The best like pro runners, even at the end of an Ironman, they're running really well. And then a lot of people in training that are really high level look good. But when you're on the Ironman and you're running, there's this shuffle that happens, right? There's this whole like other thing that develops, which is, it's kind of like total immersion. You're not going super fast, but you're just trying to be as efficient as possible. And it's a cross between a fast walk and a slow run. But yeah, I mean, going to runners for running is a great idea of how to be a runner. And that's actually what a lot of triathletes do, is they have a swim coach, a run coach, and a cycling coach.
Yeah.
For like technique, actually not so much in cycling, but for running and swimming for sure.
There are two big cues that I noticed. So, and from a lifetime of racing motocross, I've built this this pattern of posture that is not beneficial for swimming in particular, because it makes your hips just drag super far down. But if you look at like motorcycle riders, dirt bike riders in particular, the good ones, they carry their chest high. They're very upright. Their head is straight up. It's like a bar from their chest to the top of their head. And then after that, there's a lot of anterior pelvic tilt, meaning that their pelvis is tipped forward. So their lower back is really curved in the back. And what that does is that it allows your upper body and your lower body to be fully separate from each other. So when your lower body and your bike is moving all around underneath you, it doesn't upset your upper body. And that makes you really stable and dynamic and able to handle a bike well. Some people call it unlocking your hips, and it's really helpful for that. However, it's really bad for swimming because it makes you just like bow your stomach and you just drop right down. And then it's also bad for running. But the interesting thing is, if you look at a lot of triathletes, they have more of that posture. Their chest is extremely puffed out. There's a difference between shoulders back and chest puffed out, as I've learned. And then there's also a difference between holding like your pelvis in the proper position and then tilting it really far forward. I can't help but think that it's probably exacerbated by the fact that you're in the TT position, that you end up having a much shorter everything in the front, hip flexors, psoas, everything else, right? Like you've just been in this super hunched over position. And then when you get to running, it's hard to fully posture up and then have any sort of posterior tilt in your pelvis, not even posterior, just upright. So it's interesting looking, I've realized I've been looking at people in a compromised state, looking for form indication when maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just be looking at runners. So I've worked with running coaches and everything else. And I think I've found some great ways to be able to soften up the landing and make it so that I can be a bit more durable. Or I should say, just avoid injury easier.
That's what I'd say right now with you, John, is just make sure you don't get injured running as you up your volume and go. I wouldn't go super into like technique. Even there'll be runners who run for 10 years just fine. And then they start working on some technique and stuff. You're going to get a much bigger bang for your buck, not getting injured. That's the horrible thing about running, is that all runners get injured at some time. And it's how you manage that and prevent those mitigate them and prevent those injuries is what's important.
Yeah, for sure. So
you're going to kill it though, John. What was your first 5K time again?
18 flat.
So he had his first 5K, 18 minutes flat. And I was like, that's some BS. This is a short course. Cause that's what I thought. And then it was like this thing called Reno 5000. And the whole idea of Reno 5000 is what it was, like a measured certified 5K. When you ran that, like that was his pitch, is like, this is actually the right length. And that was super annoying. So first 5K, and you didn't even train, right? You ran like for a month or something?
No, I didn't do that. I think I did 2 runs the week before, but I was in off season, off the bike. So,
okay. So 2 runs, 18-minute 5K. He is a national level mountain biker, but time trials, you're a very good time trialist. If you can just figure out how not to die swimming, you are going to be amazing. I really do think so. And Xterra, as long as Brandon doesn't show up, you're going to be really good there. Just pick different races.
He just got the stop sandbagging email. Did you know that exists? So
no.
They sent him an email, Xterra did, because our COO, Brandon Need, we've had him on the podcast before. He won Xterra World Champs in his age group this year. Super impressive. And he got an email from Xterra that was like, hey, we encourage you to race in the elite category because of your speed and your abilities. You should be racing there. So he got like the stop sandbagging email. They did say at the end, they're like, we're not telling you have to move up, but we're encouraging you to do so. I think they're trying to build up their elite field by doing that. Yeah. But because the elite fields always could be bigger. But
I feel bad for Brandon on that, because Brandon is CEO of TrainerRoad, works ton, has 2 twins, has to get up at 3:30 in the morning, works all day. And then compared to his speed to the elite field, he wasn't going to be really competitive in the elite field. He was going to be back pretty far. But those people don't have jobs in well, not everyone, but he is not the life of a pro. And he's like, getting in his 30s. Like,
I don't like racing people that don't have jobs. Like, I just don't like, I like racing to be competitive. Right. And if I have to race somebody that doesn't have a job, it's just like totally different circumstances. It's really tough. I'm not saying
or that is their job.
Yes, exactly. If that is your job, that's what I mean. Like a different job. So the kid one is tough because we can't separate divisions. Like you have twins, so you're in the twin dad or twin mom division. We can't go to that degree, but
I want to know what people say on the chat comments and in the forum. So Brandon's situation, and we joked that he only trained a little bit, but he trained like a maniac for Cape Epic, and he was riding here fitness in for Cape Epic, and that's why he did so well. Should Brandon move up? Or he didn't win by that much, right? 30 seconds or something?
Yeah, it was pretty close, I think.
30 seconds a minute. Like he didn't blow it out. He's not competitive in elite, and he's got a full-time job, COO of us, and twins, and getting older. Let us know. Because I think he should stay age group, because his situation is an age group situation.
Mm-hmm. And then I still want people to pick out which event I should do. I don't think I'm going to do any races this year. I might do one. It would be very spontaneous if I did. I just don't have any on the calendar because I don't want it to be a competing priority with family, with my wife being pregnant. And then once we have the little one too. So don't want to do that. But at the same time, tell me what races we should do. Xterra mode excites me a whole lot more than just doing standard road tries or anything else. So let's get into Matt's question.
Wait. Before we move on, I don't want to backtrack, and big apologies to the people who aren't here for the triathlon discussion. But in the swim portion of this discussion, Amber's got a bunch of pink text, and I feel it's especially relevant because it brings to mind, coming off of a ski week, how resonant some things can be while other things just kind of bounce off you. She's put things in a number of ways, and I'd love to hear her explanations for each of the 4 that I'm looking at.
Cool.
Especially because, man, I seem to build myself into a situation where every time I return to Powder Creek Lodge, my skills are gone, and I don't have a deep base of ski training. So when I show up, first couple of days are a poop show. It's really embarrassing. It's very humbling. I get all the humility I'm gonna get for a year in about 3 days. Now, fortunately, there is not. So, and every year, there's some kind soul who takes pity on me. Amaret to a lesser extent. She seems to come up to speed quicker than I do. But either way, I have to relearn. So the first couple of days are tough. And on one, maybe second day, John Peachel, so John and Shelley own the lodge. John took us aside and kind of just helped us just refamiliarize ourselves with the basics of skiing. Forget about powder, just remember how to ski. And he said 2 things. One was you can't be too far forward. And that was liberating. I've heard, keep your shins in the fronts of the skis, lean forward, don't let your trailing hand glide back toward the hill, whatever it is. Those things didn't stick. But when he said you can't be too far forward, miracles happened. It was like, oh my God, I can't fall forward. And he also said, always see your hands. And I've heard steering the bus. I've heard keep your hands in front of you. It's been put a number of different ways, but he said, always see your hands. And if I couldn't see my hands, I was very conscious of the fact that I've lost one of my hands. It's trailing behind me. My point being, he put it in ways that clicked. So they were resonant. So I think the more ways, if something's just bouncing off you, don't waste your time trying to decipher it and make sense of it. Ideally, expose yourself to another coach or someone who's very good at whatever it may be, and allow them to put it in different ways, because those different ways, sooner or later, one of them is going to make sense to you.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think the best way to go through this is to have all the listeners send John tips to _lead Jonathan on Instagram.
Just Lee Jonathan _ Actually, let me say it right, so then it doesn't land. Sorry.
Lee Jonathan _ yeah. Just give him your swim tips, like your analogies. Send them through. He loves it.
Amber, can I run you through these ones then and ask you? Okay, so hips dropping, probably one of the more common things to have for new swimmers, right? So hips dropping. Amber, what would you advise me, or how would you phrase the advice to help me not have my hips drop as much?
So the thing on this is to remember that because you're in such a different environment where you're dealing more with buoyancy than you are with gravity. I mean, you're still dealing with some gravity, but now you're throwing buoyancy into the equation. Your posture in the water should be substantially different than what it is on land, because number one, you're horizontal. Number two, you're dealing with buoyancy and less gravity, and you're balancing buoyancy with gravity. Whereas when we're walking around, we're vertical and we're 100% gravity. So the analogy I like to use for this is like blocks on a string. So if you imagine that your body is a series of blocks, your head is a block, your torso is a block, your hips are a block, and your legs are a block, and they're tied together on a string. When we're walking around, that string is allowing those blocks to flex relative to one another because we're vertically having to absorb that gravity. So the function is very different. When you're in the water, you actually want to pull on that string so that all those blocks tighten up together and move together as one. You can't really tighten your spinal cord, but what you can do is if you have that in your mind, then you can straighten up your posture. So we used to do, at Stanford, we used to spend a lot of time doing posture drills on land and posture drills in the water. And one of the drills we do is called a pencil float, where you just go to the deep end, and this might not work unless you have a deep end of the pool. But you just float vertically. And what you do is you slowly tilt your pelvis under. So you're no longer doing that anterior tilt, and you really want your spine to be as straight as possible. So you actually want to start to eliminate the curves in the spine, if you will. So you're tilting your pelvis under, you're pulling your chin in so that your neck is very straight, and you're just turning your body into a kayak instead of a rubber raft. And that's another analogy that I like to use. When your autonomic system is searching for survival and safety and reassurance in the water, it's going to go rubber raft. It's going to spread out and it's going to seek stability. But what's going to ultimately help you swim is becoming not a rubber raft, but a kayak. And a kayak, as we all know, is a lot less stable than a rubber raft, but it's a heck of a lot faster, and it's going to glide a lot easier. And so tightening up those blocks on a string can really help, and working on that posture and understanding that your posture is going to necessarily be different in the water because it's a completely different environment. So those were the two things I was going to mention on that. And you mentioned body rotation and not wanting to separate that torso rotation from your hip rotation. And that's exactly right. People can get away with this. You can fudge it a little bit if you need to. Ultimately, it's going to be what works for you. But the fastest way to do it and the best way to get the most out of your glide is your whole body should move as one. So yes, like a log. And you should be rotating around one vertical central axis when you're swimming the crawl or freestyle, however you want to call that. And again, that feels very unstable.
The drown is what I call it.
Sorry. It feels really unstable, and early on when you're trying to get comfortable in the water, you're going to seek stability, and that's usually going to be the rubber raft. But if you can get to a point where you can feel a little bit more and more comfortable as a kayak, you'll be able to get a lot more out of every glide in your stroke.
John, think of it like you're becoming Arrow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what she's describing.
Yep.
Exactly.
And it's if you want to see me swimming, head over to my Instagram and check it out. Drop me tips. I may not read them. I may. Who knows? But that this is, Amber, what you're saying is and actually what Chad pointed out, it's very important to hear it at different times in different ways from different people, because at some point it's going to resonate. The whole point of in an ideal world, yes, we'd be able to hear a bit of advice and be able to capture it, remember it, have it change us and move forward. But it doesn't work that way. We just have to hear it in the right way at the right time from the right person. And then it ends up resonating. That's a really visual way of explaining the blocks on strings analogy. I really love it, Amber. And I'm now getting to the point where, like I said, I can string together 100 without being out of breath. Right. So that's really good. Way better than 25. So, and that allows me to be able to focus on, for a 25-yard bit, I can focus on technique, right, a bit more and work on those things. So it's cool to see the progress already happening.
Thanks for
and
that,
hopefully
Chad.
I'll enjoy it at some point. Yeah. Thanks, Chad.
Good stuff.
So it's always tough. I want to move things along because I'm thinking of all the different listeners that are listening to this, and somebody's yelling at it going they're afraid that their socks are going to start dropping in height and their sleeves are going to fall off because they're listening to this and they're really, upset. So but I appreciate it. And rest assured, cyclists, this Tri Talk will start to diminish as my initial learning curve goes away, and it's just business as usual thereafter. So it'll come back strong when I start winning. So check that out. Okay. Next one from Matt. He says, this question is intentionally a little open-ended. What role should watt kg or power to weight ratio of lean mass play in goal setting and general preparation? So we've talked about measuring lean mass before. You can do it with DEXA scans. You can do it with a Garmin index scale, or there's a ton of different scales that you can do that give you an estimate of body fat percentage and lean mass as well. And they'll tell you how much each of those weighs, and you can track it separately. That can really help when you're trying to detach from the overall number on the scale, because that overall number on the scale it isn't very representative of body composition. Instead, it's just an overall number. So, okay. Matt says, for example, I've peaked at 5 watts per kilogram for the last 2 years, first at 70 kilograms, then at 74 kilograms. During both peaks, I had the same amount of lean mass, and he may have mistyped this section when we were reading through. So we're just going to assume a few different scenarios. Okay. So he says, during both peaks, I had the same amount of lean mass. Last year, I was just carrying extra body fat. Looking at lean mass only, though, I went from 5.55 to 5.9 watts per kilogram. So once again, he may have made a mistype there. So some of this was due to having more structured training under my belt. The additional fat is enough that this year it's leaving me wondering about the importance of fat loss versus power development and preparing for peaking later this summer. So I just want to address this question in a few different general ways. And I think that it will help you, Matt, and it will help other athletes. But this is the whole question, right, Nate, of is it better to weigh more at the same, is it better to weigh more and to raise your power basically, or just to be the same?
Yeah. And I think I understand Matt's question. Is what he's saying is if you just looked at lean mass, his lean mass stayed the same, but his FTP went up. So that's why he went from 5.55 to 5.9.
Mm-hmm.
Which is possible, but probably not likely. But anyways, let's just talk about gaining weight to be faster, because that's the better one.
Mm-hmm. Because that's honestly, so it's a big fear, right? Because Amber, being a pro cyclist, this was your job was to make sure that you were at a good enough power to weight ratio, because that determined your ability to carry speed. Right.
Mhm.
So, we did a podcast with Ben Jacquemain on this, where we talked about when he said that he allowed himself to gain weight. He went through eating disorders and extreme, I guess, health issues, even with this whole thing, trying to make himself as thin as possible. We have this huge temptation. How did you wrestle with this in your career, and what solution did you come to?
Yeah, I want to touch back on Ben's interview too, because I think that's really germane here as well. But I struggled with this a lot. I mean, I'm 5'10", so I'm not a typical cyclist. The stereotypical cyclist, we'll say, is generally fairly petite and lean. And I came from swimming. I have big, broad shoulders. I'm tall. I'm quite a bit taller. Usually on most teams, I was at least head and shoulders above most of my teammates, which has generally made me feel big. I mean, it's, and those two words, tall and big, have very different connotations. And I definitely felt big. And that was a source of, it was a big source of stress, because in cycling, there is such an emphasis on watts per kg. And we can't deny the reality of that. It definitely is a fact, it does contribute to your ability to go uphill fast, for example. But one of the things I finally kind of wrapped my head around, because what ended up being detrimental for me was the stress around that, was feeling like I didn't have the right body to be successful in the sport. And I was thinking that while I was being successful in the sport, I was winning races in this very body that I worried was not, appropriate for the task. And even though the evidence was right in front of me, because I kept comparing myself to this particular stereotype, I always felt like I wasn't quite measuring up. And finally wrapped my head around this and realized, when I'm training, I'm asking a lot of my body. My body, by its nature, is adaptive, and it's adapting to the load that I'm asking of it. So if I'm fueling my body appropriately and I'm giving it what it needs to adapt to this load, my body is actually going to be able to optimize better than if I were the one directing that optimization. So our bodies are really wise. They know what they're doing. And I realized I just need to train really hard and give my body what it needs. And that's going to put me in the best position to perform well. And in fact, it did. And that meant that, I was never going to look the way that a stereotypical cyclist looked, but I realized that was actually okay, because what was optimal for my physiology, my frame, my build, my genetics looked different than what the stereotypical cyclist was. And that was okay, because I could still win races just being me. Didn't matter how much I restricted calories, I was never going to be 5'3". That's just not going to happen. But that really helped. And Ben's interview was really interesting too. And we can talk about that a little bit, but he talked about one year he was coming back from injury, and he was so intent on getting fit fast. He really wanted to get his fitness back so that he would come into an early season team camp with, and just really be able to throw down and prove himself. So his strategy for this was really interesting. He just trained as much as he possibly could every day, and then he just ate as much as he possibly could every night, so that he would be recovered enough to go train as much as he possibly could the next day. And so he stopped worrying about the kg part of the equation, and he just focused on how much can I actually train. And the best way to load up on the training was to fuel himself. And he just did that for this huge block going into his season. And he had one of the best seasons he'd ever had. He was carrying more weight, but what he found was he could repeat efforts better than he ever had in his career. So he would get to the top of a climb with the lead group the way he always had, but he had so much more left in the tank after that climb. And he would be able to repeat those efforts through races and from race to race in a way that he never had in his career. And it was very eye-opening for him. And it was an accidental discovery because of this injury and trying to come back quickly. But it's something that's to be considered. And Chad's got some notes in here. There's multiple ways of looking at this. But I thought that was a really interesting anecdote from Ben, being at the professional level, similarly discovering that he actually could perform in a body that wasn't necessarily the body that he thought he needed to have in order to be able to perform.
Yeah.
I want to say before Chad goes to his deep dive.
It's not a deep dive. It's just a couple comments.
Short one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to talk for Chad because I like to do that.
Get it in there. You'll probably say everything I'm going to say. So it'll
in general, besides very few cases, I think it's almost always better to be heavier and have the same watt kg. As a heavy person, I see this all the time where I'll be 4 watts per kilo and it'll be a 135 pound man who's 4 watts per kilo. There's almost no situation where that person is going to drop me or beat me in anything racing. That's because in a crit, I'm going to have much more, if I get separation, my power on the flat is going to be so much more, and my aerodynamic drag isn't equal to how much more power that I can put out, right? So I can make separation. The only time that it's really going to be an issue if it's a really steep climb, like watt kg doesn't mean you always climb the same speed at all gradients. And as it gets steeper, I did this math once, I don't remember what it is, but as it gets steeper, the weight matters even more. And it's not just watts per kg. I would also say, Matt, in this case, I don't know. I've looked at this for weight training too. Just because you're saying you had 4 kilograms more body fat, but you were faster, and that was the reason why you were faster. Maybe it's what Amber said. You were fueling yourself through training. Your aerobic system went up. You happen to gain some fat too, but that's why you're faster. So the fat itself is not like pushing you through. Another way, gaining muscle mass too is the way people do it. And that can also usually lead to being a faster cyclist also when paired with aerobic training. If you just gain muscle mass and don't do aerobic training, you're probably not going to get any faster as a cyclist. Chad, is that the same thing you're going to say?
Some of it overlaps for sure. I kind of want to home in on but the additional fat is enough that this year. So let's just talk about your concern over the additional fat. First off, we always have to view this contextually. We can't just say what is right for you is right for Vincenzo Nibali or is right for someone who's straight off the couch who's never raced before. So I look at your watts per kg, and even when you don't relate it to lean mass, you're still at 5 watts per kg. So I assume you're a reasonably competitive rider, probably very competitive, at least in your capabilities. So then you just have to go back to reducing it to course characteristics, right? What are the type of races you want to be good at? And what is the impact of gravity? Do you have to do climbs? Do you have to do the steep climbs that Nate just described? Do you have to accelerate a lot? Because accelerating more mass is more work. Then you have to consider your level of competition. Are you an age group athlete, or are you at the way high end of things, a really pointy end with national, international, and world level competitors? Those are things that are going to sway you a bit. But I think in all cases, you still have to prioritize health first. And I wish that world level riders would do this, but their consequences are different. If they don't perform, if they don't optimize, maximize everything they can, a lot of the time, the expense of their health, well, they may not have a job. They may not perform well enough to get picked up next season. They may exit the sport feeling like a failure, or they shouldn't have ever been there in the first place. All these consequences are much greater in magnitude than anything any of us as amateur athletes are likely to face. Prioritize health first and then performance next. And the beauty of it is that if your health is spot on, if that's where your focus is, then the performance usually follows suit. So it kind of handles itself. You're doing the training, you're nourishing well, you're keeping yourself healthful. Maybe a couple extra pounds keeps you, even a fat, keeps you from being sick, keeps you in just a generally healthy state so that you can continue to train, you can continue to progress. Then again, what I'm saying, the performance follows. And I'll use myself as an example. My best racing, I managed to get myself down to a scant. I actually touched 165, but that was just water weight. I was down to a pretty reliable 167, and I was racing well. But over the course of the season, I just stopped paying attention to weight. I just stopped weighing myself. I didn't like how I looked, didn't like how I felt. Yes, I was racing well, but I started nourishing better, sometimes intentionally, sometimes less intentionally. It just happened. I didn't focus on it. And by the end of the season, I had gravitated back up to 175 pounds, which is, 8 pounds. So 3 or 4 kilos, substantial amount of weight loss, but I wasn't racing any worse. In fact, I was racing just as well, if not better. I could do more. I could train more. I mean, the season just got progressively better over the course of it. And my weight came up over the course of it pretty steadily.
When we talk about pro athletes, if you're a pro, your part of your job is to form your life around your career so that it supports your career. Right. And that goes for everybody. That's why we have bedtimes that have to do with when we have to get up and be ready for work. Right. We all form our lives around our careers. Now, professional athletes, part of their job is to form their life with precision so that it allows them to be able to perform on the bike. And what I'm getting at here is that an athlete will try to remove as much external stress as possible in order to be able to train and put as much of the stress that exists in their life into the training aspect, into physical stress that comes from training, and then eliminate the rest. So that will look like they aren't going to go out and have a late night with friends doing something, or they'll pass on those things. They'll pass on the big home improvement project that they want to do, and they'll find another way to get that done, whether that's other people doing it or delaying it for a certain period of time. You do that because you're trying to optimize things down to the nth degree. Now, that's a really fragile way to live. And what it does is it puts you in a position, if you're that optimized, that if anything goes wrong, you are right on the edge. So you instantly fall off that edge into the water, right? You can tell where my fears lie, into the water. But that's what happens when you try to run things so close to the edge. Some people say, fly too close to the sun, you get burned. It's the same thing. And for average athletes, I'd argue, so when we look back in the past and we think, man, I was really fast at that time and I was really lean at that time, and we try to piece it all together, if you actually look at your ability to perform consistently, if you are really running things down the line, I guarantee you had sporadic success. You had bright spots, but you weren't able to repeat that, not just in the same workout, but day after day, week after week. It's really important that us average people are durable. We have to be able to accept what life gives us and still be able to stick to our training. And part of that comes down to our nutrition and what we're doing. If we're trying to run ourselves down to the very thin edge the whole time, it's just going to be so easy to get sick, so easy to get tired, so easy to be too fatigued to be able to complete the workouts like we need to and make improvements. So there's a huge temptation to follow this. But for all of us in particular, where it's not our jobs to be pro cyclists, I would encourage us to focus on the watts, not on the kg. And if you do that and your weight may rise, I guarantee your power will rise. But above all, you'll be able to be more consistent. And we say this like a broken record, but athletes that can train consistently over time, they're the ones that get faster. I know that sounds super simple, but if anything, we should be trying to pattern everything to allow us to be able to train consistently rather than just go up a hill quick. So that's, I think, important guidance for all of us. A lot of athletes probably do with a bit more weight because it probably helped them be able to be a bit more consistent. That can be a tricky thing to wrestle with, but don't be afraid to let yourself consider that. Don't feel like you absolutely have to be up against the ropes for everybody listening to this. So Aslan's question, he says, I've started training with TrainerRoad again after taking some time off last year. I aim to maintain consistency in training this year. Way to go. It's quite the goal. He says, being a Muslim, we fast in the month of Ramadan. For this year, that will be in April. With fasting and other commitments throughout the month, what is the best way to maintain fitness during this month, given very limited training time, maybe 1 to 2 hours per week? And primarily, he says, primarily the aim would still be to be able to hold sweet spot intensity at the end of the month. Thanks a lot for the advice. Amber, do you want to get into Ramadan in particular? And then Chad, we'll let you kind of take things on fasting. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll kind of hit surface level stuff and we'll let Chad do the deep dive.
Just a little deeper. No deep dives this week.
Okay. So I think the big thing about Ramadan is really mindset. This is a spiritual time. And so giving yourself permission to adjust your focus and adjust your expectations, right? The focus here is on, the celebratory nature of this event and the spiritual aspects of this, and allowing yourself the space to do that, and allowing your training maybe to take a back burner position during that time is fine. And giving yourself permission to do that is really important. You can do that without completely having your training go off the rails, and athletes do this all of the time. So this is not a new thing, and there are a lot of people who do this year after year very successfully. So first things first is the mindset. Where do you want your focus to be, and giving yourself permission to maybe let that be something other than training for the time being. That said, you can continue to train, obviously. Because of the fasting, as a practical standpoint, I'd suggest possibly adjusting your volume and maybe adjusting the frequency with which you're actually having intense workouts. You mentioned sweet spot. Chad's going to get more into the physiology on this, but just being able to do some work in that system pretty consistently is going to help stave off any fitness decline in that training zone. So that's, maybe you'll want to focus your intense sessions on sweet spot in particular, and maybe make those sessions a little bit shorter. And then in terms of timing the workouts, I think this is something that you can play around with and see what works for you. A lot of athletes will train right before or after iftar, and iftar is the evening meal after breaking the fast, for those who aren't familiar. So training right before or after that. If you're training right before that, you're going to be training in a deficit, but then you'll be able to replenish with the meal. If you train right after, you'll have replenished and be able to train on that replenishment. The other option is, if you're a morning person and really early morning person, you could train right before or after suhoor. And suhoor is the meal in the morning before the fast begins for the day. So that's another potential option. I think that might be a little bit tougher for those of us like me who are not morning people. But timing your workout to be right before or after one of those meals might be a way of managing the fasting aspect of this. And then the last thing is just to say, training while fasted is stressful, and you're going to have a lot of other things going on during that month aside from your training. So giving yourself permission also to ease back into a regular training schedule after Ramadan. So don't feel like you have to jump in right away, but give your body the chance to adapt back to a higher level of volume or intensity. Is going to be really important. And just trust that your body will be able to adapt to that, and trust that the fitness will come, the training will come. If you did see a little bit of a decline, it's okay. You'll get it back quickly. And I'm going to turn it over to Chad, who's got some more detail on the physiological aspects of this.
Okay, yeah, so I have a bit of notes here, not a ton, but bear with me because I jotted these down a couple of days ago, and I'm just now reviewing them. So I hope I can make sense of my chicken scratch. So first off,
you need some Adderall.
Yeah, I could use it. Would not help.
We should actually, one thing that we need to mention, Nate, you mentioned Adderall there.
Oh yeah. Good point.
Yeah. First of all, Adderall is an amphetamine. It can be abused. It's also something that you need a TUE for in some cases, if you're going to be using it in competition as well.
You cannot use it in competition. And it's something you need to have a doctor's prescription for. And I joke about it because it's a little bit funny, but I should probably not joke about it too. So that's why I should say this thing is like, don't start taking Adderall in competition, get popped, and then get banned from something. But I'm not competing this year too. And going with my doctor now to figure out what the right dose is.
We're not condoning Adderall abuse here.
Exactly.
Yes,
right.
Thank you. And when I say Chad should take it to make this a better podcast, that's a complete joke. Chad, you don't need it at all. Beer, maybe.
Caffeine. Caffeine does the trick.
One thing I want to point out when you go into this, Chad, sorry, there's what Amber was just discussing, which is fasting for very different reasons, right? This is for religious reasons, for reasons of faith and personal belief. And then there's the fasting where it's like you want to make changes in body composition. Chad's going to separate those for us, but it's really important that all of us keep in mind the fact that like there are different motivations and there's different context for this, right, Chad?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So there's a big difference between fasted training and training while fasting. So Ramadan would constitute the latter, right? He's fasting. This is part of what he has to do every day. So how do I balance training with my fasting schedule? Fasted training is different, has very clearly very different intentions. So let's talk about that first. Just a couple of things. We've talked in depth about this topic before, so I just kind of want to review a couple of things. But what we're really seeking, or what athletes are seeking when they train in a fasted state, is to maximize their aerobic adaptations via nutrient timing. So when they have their meals, when they have their nutrition relative to when they train, how can I stagger that or schedule that in such a way relative to each other that I actually receive some aerobic benefit outside of the actual training? Something else is going on in there because of nutrient timing. And we do that, athletes do that in a few ways. First, you can deplete your glycogen and then follow it with some aerobic training. So, do some hard effort and then keep on riding for a couple hours, sans nutrition. So you don't nourish right after, rather you keep riding and keep training aerobic, low intensity, while still in a fasted state, or a depleted state rather. You can deplete your glycogen and then postpone your post-workout nutrition. So you can do that hard, intense workout, and then rather than eat immediately after and refurbish your, start the glycogen restoration process, you can postpone that meal for an hour or two or whatever it may be. Same idea.
It works out. terribly, by the way, for me personally. I just want to put that out there.
Well,
these are all options these are all options that Chad are putting out there, but he isn't saying that this is the thing to do. I just want to make sure, because boy, fasted training, it's really easy. It makes so much sense in our brains to starve ourselves and deprive ourselves and require a lot from us. And then we get pride from the fact that, hey, I just did something with nothing. And I've never noticed quicker ways downhill for me than when I try to starve myself. Initially, I might get fast, but it always ends up biting me really bad later on. So sorry, Chad. Yeah, carry on. I just want to make sure, because my alarm bells are going off for some of the listeners listening to this.
Sure.
So,
yep. So these are just methods for, if you're after this is why you're training in a fasted state. Well, these are ways you can accomplish it. A third way is to come in depleted. And this is typically after a depletion workout the night before. So when we talk about an overnight fast where you're just not eating after dinner and you don't eat until breakfast, that's an overnight fast. And that's something that is very different from depleting your glycogen stores prior to bed and then sleeping on an empty stomach and then not repleting in the morning. Overnight fasts typically don't qualify. Everybody does that unless, you're amongst that very narrow subset of folks who will get up and maybe intake some protein or whatever. This typically in the strength realm, have nothing to do with what we're talking about here. So with those three methods, and there may be others, but those are, I think, the three most common. Caution is merited. First, in terms of frequency, the tendency in my own, especially, and people who I talk to about this particular thing, would just do it too often. I mean, it would be 2 or 3 times a week, and the literature seems to say that there's not a heck of a lot of benefit doing it more than once a week. That second and third time, things start to ill effects, unintended effects start to creep into the process. Caloric deficits is a big one. When you're narrowing your eating window, or you're postponing meals, or specifically trying not to eat during a workout, you can shortchange your caloric intake over the course of the day. So whether you recognize it or not, maybe you need 3,000 calories because basal rate plus all the other things you're doing, and for whatever reason you're only getting 25, especially if your eating window is narrow. That's malnourishment. That's insufficient to support the training that you're doing. Fat loss and weight loss. Try not to confuse your goals. Doing fasted training or intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding when you're seeking body comp alterations is very different than when you're seeking performance improvement. And a couple things on that. First off, you can achieve both, but pursuing both is rather problematic. And I'll just a couple reviews. One was 2017. It looked at 7 studies, and they noticed that time restricted feeding had slight, if any, differences in body composition. So whether they ate normally, whether they restricted it to a narrow window, body composition was virtually the same. A review a year later looked at 46 studies qualified for inclusion. They noticed that in the fed state, prolonged aerobic endurance. Big surprise. In the fasted state, it fostered a little bit of metabolic adaptations. What they couldn't carry out or couldn't demonstrate is, does this benefit performance? And that's always the question with this. I mean, again, we can take it back to the mechanistic level and we can say we get an uptick in this, we get signaling on this pathway, all these beneficial things happen, but do they translate to performance? And there is a scant amount of research that actually supports the link between the two. So these changes happen in the body. Do they actually make you faster? And there's still not enough behind it for us to say, definitively, or at least with a bit more confidence, time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting or fasted training really pays off. Okay, so now let's go back to training while fasting. In this case of Ramadan fasting, maintaining fitness during Ramadan is really the goal, and that's absolutely on the table. What's not is, because your nutrients are going to be pretty unevenly distributed over the course of, this, again, it's a narrow window. It's like, what are we talking about? 8-10 hours there?
Yeah.
So adaptation maximization is just not on the table. So you're not going to get fitter over the course of this. Don't expect so. But as we've talked about many, many times, maintenance doesn't require a ton of work. So there's nothing that leads me to believe that you're getting some food a day. This isn't a 24-hour fast for, the entire month. Rather, it's time restricted feeding, right? So you can get enough nutrients in to be able to perform the workouts necessary to maintain everything you've built to this point. That goes for strength, that goes for endurance, that goes for muscle endurance, the highly glycolytic stuff. It doesn't carry super well to sprints. And it's not a big surprise. And even that, the basis behind that literature is doesn't exactly translate to this situation either. My concerns, and this is supported by the LIT, is that your protein requirements are going to be hard to meet. And we've talked, and we'll talk next week quite a bit more about protein. That you're supposed to get this many grams per kilogram of body weight relative to your size, relative to how much work you're doing in a day. You're supposed to evenly distribute them. Try not to bias them toward the tail end of the day. All these things. Well, you only have the tail end of the day. So in order for you to get all that protein in that narrow window, we can bet that all of it's not going to make it into the whole muscle protein synthesis process. Rather, some of it is going to be socked away if you manage to get all 120 grams of protein in during that narrow window, which is quite a lot. Secondly, sleep butts up against your feeding window. That's going to make things tough too. You can't just have a 2,500 calorie meal and then expect to get a decent level or a quality of sleep. A study did point out on the lighter side of things that time restricted feeding plus strength training, and they looked at active females where they ate over the course of an 8-hour feeding window, and they did intake suitable energy, as they termed it. There was no adverse effect on strength or muscle mass, as long as their total daily protein intake was sufficient and that their training occurred in the fed state. And that's another key concern here. With carbohydrate restoration, that's going to be a tough thing to get on top of. So if you're doing super tough, high level or highly metabolic strength training, you're doing high intensity interval training, you're doing muscle endurance work like sweet spot and threshold work, obviously you're going to have to time your nutrition such that you're coming into it either after you ate, went to bed, got up, and you're loaded up with glycogen so you can get through the workout, or you do the work and glycogen stores are sufficient enough and then you replenish them directly thereafter so that your next workout doesn't suffer the consequences of not timing it just right. So my point here is you're going to have to really focus on your nutrition timing. You're not going to be able to get away with some of the things that people can get away with when they're eating 3 meals a day. Mm-hmm. And then finally, as far as the performance impact, I think I already touched on this, but it was a 2019 to 2020 review, 11 studies qualified, and all they noticed was that sprint power suffered. So basically everything else wasn't affected by Ramadan related time restricted feeding. So maintenance of current fitness, absolutely on the table. My recommendations are only have 3 of them. First off, no HIIT workouts over an hour. If you're going to do high intensity work, I wouldn't go for the 90-minute and 2-hour jobbers. Secondly, avoid or tiptoe around the highly glycolytic work. Again, it's going to have to be in tandem with your nutrient intake, or performance is going to suffer. Progress, well, I'd say it could stall, but really stalling is optimal here. And then finally, keep your endurance work truly easy. Don't hop on the bike and work at 85% when a workout prescribes 65% because you think for some reason you're going to fall behind because it's Ramadan.
Good advice, Jim.
This is what I think should happen. Amber just laughs before I even say the idea.
I love it.
Thanks for the confidence, Amber.
This should be good.
No. Oh, come on, guys. So you're going to, so you can eat before sunrise and after sunset, correct? Mm-hmm. So what I think you should do is that for before sunrise, you eat your very big carbohydrate meal, like some of these things that I would eat before, like Leadville, right? And with some protein in it. You wait 3 hours, you do your first ride. You're doing a low volume plan, an hour, and maybe the last one you do an hour also with workout alternatives, or maybe 90 minutes for that 3. The reason why I say 3 workouts, because you can have more time between, you have days rest between each one to further replenish glycogen stores. So you do that workout, you're going to go down, you're going to be pretty depleted, and you're not going to have that meal to like quickly replenish your glycogen stores. But that's not going to be as big a deal because 1, you're not working again that day. But if you're on low volume, you have a whole extra day to replenish. So that next night, do the same thing, like, eat lots of carbs and protein. Basically during this time, I would focus on getting enough carbs and protein. Fat will probably happen. And I wouldn't do like a high fat meal or make any of those meals low carb or make any of those meals low protein, because that's going to be really important. So then the next day on your day off, still do the same thing. Do a high carb meal for breakfast and then for dinner. And then that next morning, you're going to be replenished like after that day off, and you can do it again. Do low volume with some, as long as you're not doing, like Chad said, crazy high volume, you're going to need carbohydrates during that ride. You ate 3 hours before a lot. I think you could do 3. I bet you could do a low volume plan, maintain fitness, and not have it be too miserable. Is the way it could be. 6 workouts a week, extremely hard. 6 hard workouts, you're going to die. Not die. You know what I mean? You're going to,
absolutely no double days whatsoever.
Yes, right. No double days. But I don't think if you did, you could maybe do some really low on, if you wanted to fill stuff in, like your high level cyclist on those days that I had off, you could do some riding, but I would have it be like 55, 60% of FTP. What do you think about that, Chad? Like extremely low to spare glycogen stores and really try to burn fat during that time. And on that one too, I would do it further in the day, like right before sunset. So I would do that one as far away from eating as possible to make sure there's no, like your blood sugar isn't spiked, so that when you do start low, you'll tap into fat earlier than you would if you did it like right after breakfast. Therefore, preserving your carbohydrate stores to be, or your glycogen stores to be stocked up for that next hard workout. What do you think?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I love it.
Chad.
Nate, I just want to say I love it when you jump in at the end like this, because you're doing exactly what Chad mentioned earlier, which is you're bringing a different perspective to it and saying it in a different way that might land and resonate better with people who are listening. So that was why I was smiling, just for the record.
We got three different ways of managing it, or I guess, or 3 different forms of advice. Pretty sweet. Rapid fire time. Okay. First one, can you tell us how TrainerRoad came to be and what inspired it? Much love. That one came in. Nate, give us the quick one on this.
I wasn't listening. I was reading the comments. I
want to hear Chad's version.
Oh, how TR came to be and what inspired it? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So
give us the quick one.
Okay.
You met this guy named Chad. He had great eyes, and he was leading this class.
Like long walks on the beach.
Sick calves.
Great calves.
I was getting the triathlon, and I wanted to be fast on the bike. And I bought a Kurt Kinetic trainer, and I tried to do indoor training at my house because I didn't have enough time with work and stuff. And it was just miserable. I think I did 15 minutes because I just tried to just go hard on the trainer in my bedroom. And 15 minutes, that's enough. I'd be done. So I went to Chad's studio, and I was just out of college and I didn't have much money. And Chad was charging $20 a class. And
you could prepay at 15 a class. So I wasn't totally trying to gouge.
Do you think I'm made of money? How do I prepay?
No,
I'm paycheck to paycheck. So I do that, and it takes 30 minutes to get there, then an hour there and 30 minutes back. And if I want to bike 3 days a week, that's $60 a week just for bike training. That's pretty expensive. And but I did 2 of them, and I went from a 235 FTP to 265 FTP, and I was like, oh my goodness, this really, really works. And I said, I could just code this myself. And I didn't know there was an ant stick at the time. So I was just going to have a workout that walked me through and told me the power targets. And then I found there was an ant stick. You could display the power. And I knew that Chad's workouts were amazing, where you went through them and you were you just barely always got through them, but you got through them. And I was like, how did you do that? So talked to Chad about being the coach. And then we found out we could sell it, or, got a lot bigger than
make the whole world
faster. I thought it was going to be,
instead of just
right?
Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Who's who in the Seinfeld cast? From us,
definitely Kramer.
Nate, it's definitely Kramer. But when you jump, most dynamic. Yeah. When you come in, you burst into a topic, I absolutely visualize Kramer bursting the door open.
Chad's putty.
Yeah.
Right. I forgot about him.
I think Chad is like George sometimes. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think if you were listening to my internal monologue, I'm probably George. But that doesn't always come across me.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And Ivy has self-proclaimed herself as Newman.
And Newman. Yeah. Ivy is Newman. It's fantastic. Everyone should follow Ivy on Instagram because she's been posting that.
So funny.
And then Fraser, everything else. All right. Would you rather replace your next 30 workouts with the ramp test or 30 minutes at 50% FTP?
It's easy. Take the 30 minutes.
Question.
30
basically
minutes.
what I'm doing anyway.
30 minutes at FTP.
Yeah.
100%.
I bet Pete would say the ramp test. He might be the only person. He loves just going. Yeah. If it's not going hard, he doesn't want to be riding the bike. So another question, and Chad, you can answer this for us. Lots of Pete stuff this week in rapid fire. Is it true that Pete left because he was called back to Asgard? Is that true, Chad?
It is true. Yeah. We talked about it this weekend, as a matter of fact.
As we assumed. If you had to switch hair with someone else from the podcast, who would it be?
I was thinking about that this morning when I was trying to do my hair. I was like, man, I gotta go, Chad. This takes way too much time.
If I had to, it'd be John.
Welcome to my rationale.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I was forced
if you
to,
had to, I see what you're saying, Nate. You're saying that you're number one. So if you had to give it up, you go to number two, which is me, is what you're saying.
Because I am comfortable with myself and I am accepting of who I am. So I don't need to change. But if someone forced me, I would go to you, John. I like your hair.
Hey, thanks. I'd go to Chad.
You
really
can
wish
today
I had like a bad
on the podcast.
Yes.
Let's do it.
I wish I wish I had some really bad receding hairlines, then I would like shave my head and I'd have an excuse to do it. But I look really mean with a shaved head, and people that have watched the podcast long enough can know. They saw me shave it on the podcast. I look mean. So
you do.
Yeah.
Angry.
Yeah. And I'd have to like change my personality to match my hair. That would be rough. So, okay. TrainerRoad workout that encapsulates your personality and why. I'm going to expand this to just interval structure, just in case we don't know the names.
I skipped ahead, so I have one locked and loaded. Spanish needle, because I'm really intense and then I'm really mellow, and then I'm really intense and then I'm really mellow.
That's true. It's Chad. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Ooh.
Disaster, because that's a lot of times that happens. It's like,
I was gonna say Baxter for you, Nate, because it's like constantly adjusting the intensity nonstop the whole entire time.
My personality has a high HRV. It's just always adjusting to what's going on. It goes back and forth.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Amber, what about you?
I am totally blindsided by this question. I was not prepared for this. So I don't have a good answer for you. I'll have to think about this. I might have to get back to this on another episode. Sorry. I feel really prepared.
I'm reduced amplitude Billats. That's me. So give me like a short burst and I will sprint over and over, but then I do need rest in between, unlike Chad, where Spanish needle just keeps on going. Okay. Next one, MMA match between Chad and Nate. Who wins? Nate, did you ever do jujitsu? I can't remember if you did or not. Was it just your kids?
You guys say what you think will happen, then I'll tell you what the answer is.
So Amber, you first.
Oh, man. I feel like Nate would win because he would care more.
Oh, I'm going to say Chad because Nate's got nice, Chad. I like that. Nate's got long limbs, and those long limbs could just be taken and grabbed and turned into an arm bar or turned into anything else really easily. Yeah. So I'm thinking that means that Chad being a technician, as he ever is, a diligent technician, I could see him grabbing a lazy arm and turning it into an arm bar real quick.
Ooh.
Yeah, I definitely win because I'm a dirty fighter and I'm a good wrestler.
Oh yeah, you did wrestle, didn't you? Back in high school?
Oh, hey, that changes things.
No, you didn't.
No, not in high school.
Okay.
No, just a lot of jiu-jitsu, which is a lot of wrestling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think we're tied now. Or we could be. I think we're going to be tied.
Yeah. I'm a nice guy. In college, like,
that's a weird thing to start with. Where's this going?
I had a lot of friends who weren't nice people. I did 4 years of like mixed martial arts / like street fighting stuff in college, where grappling too.
Street fighting?
I used to get in a lot of, it's just dirty fighting. I got in a lot of fights in college. I got like a scar right here from a bottle to a chin in a bar fight. Still won that fight. Won every single fight.
My answer.
I have done.
Whoa.
Knocked people out. Like these are things I never started any of these. These are ones where like stuff would happen, and you know what I mean? Like that, like you're a big target
too. You'd stand out all the time.
Oh,
being tall.
Can I tell you a really quick story? Okay.
Are you going to regret telling the story? If not,
are we going to regret it?
No. Yeah. This is probably. Basically, I'll give you the short story. We were at this bar, and there are these 3 other dirtbag guys, and this guy like slapped his girlfriend because she was pissing him, and my friend got in his face. These 3 guys jumped my friend like 301, so I got in there, and that's why I got a belt in the face. Anyways, we won that fight at the end. These 3 guys only remembered me from the fight, followed me for years. Like I would go to a bar, and when I was away from my friends, they would like show up and like try to fight me. This one time I went into the bathroom, and I went, there's like the men's bathroom, you walk in, there's a urinal. There was a line. So I went to the side of the door, and this other guy, he like comes in as fast as he can and runs up to like sucker punch the guy on the urinal, thinking it's me, but I'm on the side. So if they saw me, they were like, I'm 6'6", I don't know if I mentioned that. And I was big in college. I was like 210, and these guys were like 5'8", 5'9". They would never fight me directly. They'd always try to like get me when I wasn't looking. And then how it ended, spring break in Mexico, there was like a college thing, we went there. He was there, like the main guy, without his friends. And I'm a nice guy.
Storyline.
And I told them, I'm like, hey, let's go talk about this. Because I had all these, like, it was anxiety every time I went out because I didn't know what would happen. I was like head on a swivel. And I didn't even start the fight, right? I was just like, hey, I don't want my friend to go to the hospital inside of this thing. So we talk at this bar, and we like are kind of making up, and there's some other people, some other women there. And I'm like, hey, you should do a body shot with them. Basically, I got him to like meet another lady who he liked. And he thought I was the coolest guy after that.
Hey, look at that.
And that was the
words,
end
not
of that.
Fists.
Yeah. But so going back to Chad, I mean, I wouldn't ever fight Chad. There would be no reason to do it. So
don't consider it sparring. Consider it sparring.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Even that, I don't have.
Same.
It has to be like somebody has to be like like protecting somebody in order for me to be into that mode. It can't just be like, hey, you know what I mean? There's not, the thing doesn't come out unless it's like a protection thing.
Nothing but love for everybody. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you too, Chad.
There's so many layers to Nate.
I'd grapple you though. Grapple would be fun. That's not, starting from the knees too. No takedowns, because I'm too old.
We have layers of Nate in this. Like we have playing a tuba, swimming, street fighting, using his smarts to solve the whole thing.
We learned a lot about Nate just now.
People.
I know, right?
We
were only probably like one episode of Beers with Chad away from these kinds of stories.
Yeah. Why did it end? Okay. Next one. When is Coach Chad going to the CrossFit Games? You've tried before, right, Chad?
No, in its earlier days, not its earliest days, but earlier, I gave it a fair crack, and I ended up basically dumping a squat bar on my head a number of times in desperation. So I'm not sure I'm entirely cut out for it. And again, once we introduce competition into it, it gets a little less interesting to me.
Those athletes are so insanely specialized, even, at age group,
and that's the other thing.
Levels.
Even at the master's level, ridiculous specimens. Ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Fittest athletes in the world, right, Nate? Fittest athletes alive. Sorry, I know that triggers Nate.
Don, I will kick the hornet's nest in a lot of stuff, but not that.
All right, one cadence for the rest of your life: 75 RPM or 105 RPM.
Oh, 75, 100%. I'm such a masher naturally. I have to really, really focus to bring my cadence up. And in terms of performance, I do better with a higher cadence. But if I'm just going with what feels good, 75 all the way, all day.
That's completely my answer. So
I used to do 100, but now I do 80. So I'd say 75.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say 75 just because I like standing every once in a while, and standing at 105 RPM would be ridiculous looking and dangerous. So yeah, I'd say that too. It's funny though, when I race crits, my cadence tends to be like 100, maybe even just a bit north of 100, but I don't train for that when I'm training for mountain biking. When it's really matters, it's lower cadence for sure. Jonathan, would you rather race with ankle socks or badly mismatched kit?
We have a better one. From the chat.
I do.
Who would win the fight, John or Amber?
Amber.
That's what people say.
Oh yeah, Amber for sure. I'm not a good fighter. I just got beat up by my brother my whole life, but I don't know. I'm not a good fighter.
Oh man.
Okay, Race with ankle socks or badly mismatched kit? Neither. I would race with no socks, and I would say I forgot my socks, so I wouldn't have to. No, no. I would say that I forgot my socks, and I would race with no socks.
I have some state championship ankle socks that I wore out of desperation the other day on the trainer, and Amaret couldn't even look at me. And every time I looked down, I just wanted to quit. Just wanted to get off the bike and hang it up.
Oh, I feel this. Yeah, for sure. If I like, I consider, yeah, I don't know. I would find ways to solve anything to do a workout, but if I don't have mid-calf socks, it would be hard for me to do the workout. Okay. Have to do one Ironman or Unbound 200.
Ironman.
And that's coming from somebody who's done Unbound.
Oh.
Yeah. And from somebody who hates running. Hates it.
Yeah.
You can walk it. I mean, an Ironman doesn't have to be hard. If you're fit and you go
Just
17 hours, just long.
Oh, yeah.
For me, just because I'm so worried about concussion on dirt now, Ironman for sure.
I'd rather do an Ironman all day. Like, give me 6 Ironmans in a row over Unbound. Yeah, I just don't like
Ironmans
nothing about that
day.
Race, especially for me. But I just zero. I mean, not even zero ambition, just like a will to avoid that. I don't want to do that race. It doesn't sound fun at all to me. That said, anybody that's doing it, I don't want to demotivate you. It's your race and it's what you want to do.
Yeah. John said that Cape Epic wasn't going to be fun either and loved it.
And that I was totally wrong about that race. So I also didn't expect it to be just awesome trail the whole time, which it basically was. I expected it to be fire roads, boy, it was totally not.
Too.
So yeah, it changed pretty hard. One thing on this, Nate and Chad, I don't know if you saw this. Amber and I were talking about this. Did you see that? So USAT made gravel triathlon a thing now.
Amazing.
So
it should be.
It's a thing, but here's the crazy thing. Aero bars are not allowed in gravel triathlon. However, aero bars are allowed in normal gravel racing. It's 180 degrees.
That sounds like so much fun, actually. A gravel triathlon with no aero bars. I'm guessing is drafting allowed or not?
Yeah, it's got to be. I don't know. I didn't see anything on drafting, but it's got to be.
If it's not allowed too, that would make it even more fun. Especially for a bigger person on gravel. Like, oh, that sounds cool.
I'd rather just do Xterra.
No, because Xterra has technical.
It's not that technical. They aren't like single track 6 courses or anything like that. It's just mountain bike trails.
But it's going to be less more technical than a gravel race.
Certainly. I just, yeah.
But are they going to wear ankle socks?
No socks is the answer you're looking for, Amber.
Oh, so gravel triathlon, no socks.
John, if you ever do this, I would suggest wearing socks. I did not wear socks for some 5Ks.
Oh, don't worry about me, Nate. I will have socks. You don't have to worry about that.
You should do ankle socks, though.
Oh, no way. If I'm going to put forth the effort to put a sock on my foot, it will go to my mid calf. I have self-respect.
You do the bike portion without socks. And then for running, that's when you put on like an ankle sock so that you can, you don't get a blister and it feels comfortable.
I know that's what's done. I'm about to go against the current in that regard.
Full disclosure, early in my career, ankle socks were the thing. So our standard pro team issue socks were ankle socks.
It's a safe place, Amber.
If anybody does Google image searching, you will find lots of pictures of me racing in ankle socks.
I just want to get ahead of this, she says.
Exactly.
Everyone was doing it. Perfectly normal. I experimented a lot in college.
They were shorter than I thought, looking back. Yeah. Favorite winter Olympic sport? That is exciting to see. Skiing.
Alpine ski racing, yeah.
I don't. Nothing.
Super G for skiing. Oh, 100%. Slalom, because I hated doing slalom so much. I still enjoy watching it, but boy, I couldn't stand it.
Sure.
Good call.
What is Super G, real quick?
Super G. So downhill is the most straight with the least amount of turns on the sketchiest tallest, steepest mountains. And then it goes from there, from downhill, it goes to super G, to giant slalom, to slalom. So slalom is the tightest sort of turns. So I liked it. Not quite downhill, but somewhere in between. Okay. And then one from our live chat, how to get featured on your Instagram account. Tag us. Just share a story of you doing your workout, doing anything like that, and tag TrainerRoad. There's also, if you look, there are gifts that are TrainerRoad branded gifts. They say get faster, kind of an Easter egg. You can find them. Search for TrainerRoad. You'll find them on there. And then what's the last thing? What's Chad drinking these days and what kept him warm in Canada? Certainly not jackets and pants and everything else.
Pete kept him warm in Canada.
So cuddly. Oh my God. In Canada, I was coming off of, I recently had bronchitis and laryngitis, totally lost my voice. So I wasn't hitting the usual stuff. And we underbought beer, which is the sinnest of sins. We ran out of beer. So
up at the lodge,
as long as we could stretch it, we stretched it. And then we got desperate and we started drinking leftovers, which was not pretty at all. But in my home life, it's all about Whistle Pig, because Whistle Pig, they only do rye whiskey. And if you order from their website, you can actually duck Washington's hefty 20% state tax or liquor tax.
Chad, this is published on the internet. I don't know if I would say such things.
If they want to audit me, they can. I'll pay the $5 that I ducked.
There we go. I'm shocked because the first time we went to Powder Creek Lodge, Chad brought provisions and we were worried that the helicopter wasn't going to be able to take off. Quite literally, we brought too much.
Overbought
to get to the lodge.
It's because we made weight. There's a weight limit and we were under the weight limit. So, I mean, how else would I fill that excess?
I mean, how else would you fill it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we hit the liquor store at 9 a.m.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. Raphael's question. Hey, y'all, love TrainerRoad in the podcast. The structure helped me get 40 more watts this past year compared to just riding unstructured rides the year before. Way to go. That's awesome. Structure helps, makes a difference. Raphael says, I'm in the Navy and I wanted to see how I can use TrainerRoad for our physical test assessment. The test consists of push-ups and plans for as many and as long as you can, followed by a cardio portion. I have the option of using a stationary bike and have 12 minutes to burn as many calories as I can. This sounds like a fun challenge. Well, type 2 fun. Right now, I'm topping off at 167 to 173 calories burned, which is an excellent score. And he says excellent in quotes. I assume that's the ranking. But to get an outstanding score, I would need to be above 200 calories. So what plan would be the most beneficial for this kind of effort? Ooh, this one's fun. Where do we want to take that? Chad, do you want to go first on this?
Yeah,
yep.
Go Chad.
Yeah, it's any plan that yields a bigger FTP because that translates to more watts per minute, which translates to more kilocalories per minute. Mic drop. I mean, that's it. It's really that simple. The bigger the FTP, the more watts or the more kilocalories you're going to burn per 12 minutes.
Goes back to that previous question of like, what it sounds like that score isn't weight adjusted. Maybe it is, but it should be weight adjusted because a bigger person was going to burn way more calories per of energy
calories,
output than someone who's smaller. So hopefully that is adjusted. If not, gain 30 pounds. That's going to help a lot in fuel and stuff like that. So is there a specific plan though? What is the 12 minutes? What is that, like climbing road race? Is that
climbing road race would be the jam. That would be, because really like you want to, the way to arrive at the most calories burned isn't to do those stochastic efforts where it's on, off. It's to have steady work across the top, right? So it's really finding your highest sustainable 12-minute power, and climbing road race is one of the best ones. If you actually built a plan with Plan Builder, it would run you through sustained power build and into climbing road race for that. So that could be a really good option that you could do. The one thing that I would say with this is, I feel like pacing would matter quite a lot here. You wouldn't want to go out too hard for sure. And certainly don't want to leave anything on the table. It's just like a TT.
And two, with climbing road race, that'd be the specialty phase. And if Raphael, you have time, I'd go through all of them, obviously, because you want to raise your FTP too, and not only do 12-minute efforts, but when you can get really good at 12-minute efforts and at the end. But don't just do 12-minute efforts or like climbing road race, like over and over and over again. I wouldn't do that either. in case that's confusing with the way we said it.
Yeah. And if you said 173 calories right now, roughly, that's not a whole lot more work. Like I would expect you to be able to get to the point where you're 200. If you're, I mean, I don't know, maybe you're at peak fitness already in this case, Raphael, I don't know. But if you're not at peak fitness, I expect you to be able to get to that. That'd be a lot of calories burned for sure, but you could do it. Let's bring this down to ground for everybody else. Okay. That's not in the Navy facing this physical test. For the rest of us, that sort of duration is really useful on a bike, right? That 10 to 15 minute power. That's like the sort of thing that helps you make a breakaway stick. It's the sort of thing that helps you bridge to a long lost one. Thinking of one of the races that Nate has done, race analysis. You can check it out on our YouTube channel where Nate bridged forever up to this group and finally made it. It's not the like 2 and 3 minute power. It's the stuff that goes beyond that really helps you bridge the unbridgeable gaps or get the break that actually ends up sticking. It's also in many places, you won't have climbs that are longer than that. So that means that you'll be good somewhere within that duration, right? If you're in a really big mountainous area like where we're at, or if you're in the Alps or something like that, you probably have really long climbs, but in most places you probably don't. So this is like there are a lot of people that use TrainerRoad for specific events, and that's one way to do it. There are also people that just use it because they want to be fit. And I would really recommend this as an approach. You can just say, I know I just want to train I don't have an event on my calendar when you're going through Plan Builder. And then you can go through and just select the sort of training that you want to do. And those longer climbing road race, man, it makes you into a really, really robust, strong cyclist because you can do that. Amber, is this where you focused on these like longer durations during your career being a domestique, or did you focus on durations like this?
I trained all zones, and I really needed to be an all-arounder. So I had to be able to bridge gaps, or sit on the front for hours at a time. So I really had to be able to do a little bit of everything and be a Swiss Army knife when it came to performance. So that's kind of what my training looked like, honestly.
These are probably the durations that I find like some of the hardest too, like 10-minute intervals where you're over threshold, not a lot over, but just enough where it's like you're not VO2, but you're certainly not riding at threshold and you're over. Oof. They're extremely difficult.
While you were talking, I did some more research on this question because I never do any of it ahead of the thing. I like to go live. So Raphael, I just did some math, and if you are new to structured training, you said 40 more watts. That's amazing. I would keep doing what you're doing. So 12 minutes at 200 calories, that's outstanding. If this is not weight adjusted, so that equals out to about 1,000 calories an hour if you were to maintain that wattage the whole time. And that is like 278 watts, I believe, to get 1,000 calories in like an average. So for that 12 minutes, you need 278 watts for 12 minutes. Now, if you are 200 pounds, that's way different than your 135 pounds, right? So it's possible to get depending on your size, it may be possible to even get your FTP up that high where you could hold it for an hour, depending on how close you are. It's not an unreasonable ask, again, based on size. So I remember when Chad first started, I look at all his workouts and he'd be like, how'd you do 1,000 calories an hour, man? And I was so impressed. I just looked before Cape Epic, I did that for 2 hours. I did 2,000 calories, a little more. And before when I started, I was doing like 400 calories an hour, right? Which is crazy. The amount of improvement your body can make with structured training over time and consistency. So Raphael, I think you can do it, especially if it's a target for you that you want to hit, depending on your size again, but I think you can do it.
This is the seemingly backwards relationship too that exists with so many, like when you're a new cyclist, a lot of people get into cycling because they want to lose weight or burn calories, just casually speaking, right? And then you look at them, they aren't able to burn as much as the really seasoned cyclist that probably already looks fit and everything else to them, right? And it always is like a big frustration point. But that's just another way to look at it is when you're training yourself and getting more fit, your body's capable of doing more work. The more work your body can do, the more obviously more energy it needs to expend in order to do that. So that's why power meters are so cool. We're just measuring that work that's being done. And that's why you get such a good indication of it. And honestly, that's a good way to think of like your body in general, just like how many kilojoules can you go through in an hour, something like that. And that's a good, healthy way to look at things, because once again, it's kind of going toward what Amber says, less worrying about body composition, power to weight, everything else, instead of being in awe at what your body can do and giving your chance to your body to do something amazing like that. So
isn't it fun, everyone here, to see those big power numbers and just to have like a higher FTP? Like, it feels so good.
It makes me reach when I'm not there. It makes me reach to get back to there, right? To get back to the point, because I really do enjoy that. It's pretty sweet.
And it's all relative to you, right? Because it's whenever you see that new, you see that new number, you're like, wow, that's crazy. And it might be,
it could be 100
watts for you. Yeah.
It could be 400 if you're Pete. I don't know if he ever hit that. He just kept riding at 400 until he blow up.
No, he hit it. Yeah.
So, okay. Tim's question. In recent podcasts, you've talked about goal setting and about adapting expectations after illness. Forgive me. Could you give, did I just say that word? I'm going to restart with Tim's. I'm sorry, Tim. In recent podcasts, you've talked about goal setting and about adapting expectations after illness. Could you give some pointers for mentally coping with race cancellations? This has had a huge effect on me in the last 2 years of COVID, and it's still happening with races being postponed. I've seen this recently with a lot of you athletes down in Australia, New Zealand, and it's been pretty tough for y'all having a lot of those races canceled. So bummer to hear that. Who wants to take this one first in terms of maintaining motivation with this? Chad, you've raced a ton over the years, but you didn't really face a whole lot of race cancellations back in the day.
I don't have much to contribute on this. I think I'm here to learn on this one because I don't think I've come up against anything that got, we've had races be rescheduled, and that is a pain for sure. But my struggles with motivation have nothing to do with the calendar that keeps getting rearranged.
Nate?
I go? Yeah. So Cape Epic got pushed out, like twice. So that turned something into like 8 months into 2.5 years. And so I had to extend my motivation all the way through that. And the thing that I got the most, one, I really wanted the goal, but two, I started like, you'd have little motivations and wins to do this workout. And like we were developing progression levels. So I was like, ooh, can I do this thing today and get through it and achieve this thing? Can I push my carbs up? And I have these internal little like battles and missions that I have for myself that when I did them, it would be rewarding and I would feel good about myself. And then I would do it again and again and again. On top of that, having this overall kind of like long-term thing. And I knew if Cape Epic wasn't going to happen, we talked about this before, John, like I would have just put my fitness into something else. There would be some other type of race that I could do somewhere, or even like a Geiger hill climb, a local hill climb here, something that I could put an all-out effort and see where I stood compared to other people with all my work. And so that's what motivated me.
Yeah.
John,
Amber, what do you have?
I was just going to say, I remember at one point, John, you actually made your own race and did your own stage race, which I thought was a really cool and creative idea. I think there's a couple of things here. One is motivation, always the heart of it is success. Success breeds motivation. So when, we talk a lot about setting process goals and breaking those down into smaller, very achievable goals. And if you're doing that, it can help maintain some motivation over the long term. But I think that what you're dealing with here is you have this destination or a finish line in mind, figuratively and literally, and it's suddenly gone. And that's really hard because, if that's kind of the driving factor behind your motivation and what's getting you on the bike every day, having that pulled out from under you can be really disconcerting. So I think there's a couple of things. One is having a resilient and adaptable mindset is a strength that will absolutely serve you in the future once hopefully we're past the point of having events canceled all the time. And so experimenting with what works for you. I would say approach this with a growth mindset and some curiosity. So what is it about this goal that really fueled you? What is it about the goal being removed that's really bothering you? Can you get creative and create another goal that might fulfill those same needs? And figuring out what that is for you and answering those questions for yourself is going to teach you so much about who you are as a person and as an athlete. And it will really, really help you to apply those things in the future when events are back on the calendar and we're not dealing with these kinds of cancellations. So I would, as hard as this might be, I would look at it as a learning opportunity, because I think it's a moment where you can be reflective and learn something about yourself and experiment, right? So John, you made your own stage race and went and executed it. And maybe that's something that you could do with a couple of friends. Maybe it's just creating a cool new creative challenge for yourself that allows you to go express that hard-earned fitness. That may not be a race format. That might just be a cool, really big adventure ride. But see if you can really get in touch with what it is fundamentally that feeds your motivation in general, because that will be something that will pay off and be helpful for you in the future.
Yeah, well said, Amber. I think for me, it comes down to I've had to learn to control what I can control. And that also bike races fall into that. I can't control if a bike race is going to happen or not. They used to be just solid, like Chad said, like they almost always happened, but they don't. And that's just is what it is. And so as a result, I've kind of looked at it like, okay, so what do I want to do with my body this year? Like, what sort of training do I want to do? What sort of things do I want to accomplish internally? And then if an event lines up with it, then I throw that event on there. But if an event doesn't line up with it, I still have that trajectory in place and I still want to achieve something. So whereas before it was entirely what events are going to go on my calendar, now I'll build toward those. Instead, now it's like, well, what do I want to do? And then I find events that time in with that. And if I can do them, that's awesome. But if I can't, I'm not going to let it stop me. So be just like, once again, use this as see it as an opportunity to celebrate all you've achieved in the training process, rather than using it as an opportunity to prove or to do anything else that comes from a race, if that makes sense. Just use it as an opportunity to celebrate what you've done, because you've done a lot of hard work to get to whatever point you're at. So might as well celebrate it. Phil says, long-term TrainerRoad user here. Really impressed with the adaptive training, which is certainly offering up different workouts to my previous years following your plans. That has been a fun experience to see, right, Nate? Like with a lot of athletes that have done the plans before, and now they're like, I'm getting totally different workouts, and I haven't had this the past 2 years or however many years. It's cool. He says, during the base plans, I like to swap out Sunday's sweet spot workout with a longer outside endurance ride. Before adaptive training, I would just use the advice in the current week's plans notes. But now with adaptive training, I'm not sure what to do. Should I choose a productive or achievable endurance ride that roughly matches the TSS of the adaptive training advised sweet spot workout? Or should I still follow the week's plan notes? I really enjoy listening to all of your podcast contributors. Hopefully one of them can help me out. Cheers and thanks from Phil. Nate, how would you answer this one?
You know what? It's going to be bad. Let's have a little product design meeting right now. Not prioritizing, but Amber, sometime in the roadmap, we need to build this in the next, let's say 6 months. We need to build this feature into the product so that on Sundays, it's an automatic choice between the two. And then in Plan Builder, I think what should happen is you can choose. Do you want to have a shorter sweet spot ride on Sunday, or do you have a longer aerobic ride on Sunday? Then you can make that be indoor, outdoor as the default, and then switch back and forth. That would be Amber's team that would build that on the calendar. It's very doable for us. Amber's has other priorities first, FTP estimation being the one that she's working on right now. So that's, yeah.
It is something we've talked a lot about. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, we have.
And
yeah,
it's just a priority thing, but I think it's to the point with now adaptive training that we have the system to do this really, really well. And we should put that into the product now. So let's talk later about priorities inside of that. And I can't promise a specific date because of priorities. We'll have to talk to our COO, Brandon, about it, but that's something that I do definitely want to put into the product because it is confusing. And some people who have the time, it could be great for them to do an outside ride that's easy on that Sunday. So I think this is which one to switch is a better answer question for Chad.
Yeah, in terms of which workout to sub in, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to cover is just how he can do it now, in between now and then, right? In between now and when the feature gets put in there. He's doing it right. There's workout alternates. It's a great feature that you can look at, and you can adjust things and change around some different categories to be able to select the workout that you want to use instead. I would, so in this case, you'll be going from like a sweet spot workout to probably down to a tempo or to an endurance workout. I still, when you look at that in terms of which workout to select it based off your levels. Make sure it's productive or achievable. Don't try to match the TSS, just try to make it productive or achievable for those zones. That would be the best advice that I would give. And that's one of the cool things about, everything with adaptive training that's come along, is that it's easy to see what workout is the right workout or what workout is absolutely not the right workout.
Then add 50 to 75% more volume on that too. So
Sure.
if you have an hour sweet spot, go to 90 minutes to an hour and 45 minutes aerobic, like an endurance ride. Don't match it time for time, because it's not going to be the same.
Yep.
Sound good, Chad?
Sounds great. Thanks for bailing me out.
Nice.
Chad goes,
Nancy. Nancy says, I ride in a hilly area and all my rides require me to ride with a lower cadence. Yet all your climbing workouts require or specify a higher cadence. I find I rarely train with specificity, as all rides are higher cadence than I ride outside regularly. So why do you specify all the high cadence for climbing? That doesn't make sense to me, as we all climb in a lower cadence than 90 RPM if it is really a climb. Well, not everybody, Nancy. Some people climb at high cadence and that's just how they roll. Look at Chris Froome. That dude's he could make a smoothie with those legs and he's going up. So he's like burning at like RPMs that are crazy. So not everybody is that way, but I get your point, Nancy, especially with bad, or with gearing that limits you. Yeah. You just end up riding at a low cadence. Chad, what do you say to this one?
First off, Nancy, if you're not already doing it, I recommend turning on the workout instructions. Excuse me. Because, and I know not all the workouts have instructions, but certainly in the earlier phases in the base training, they should all have instructions. I do try to take this into account. I try to make sure that, things have changed a bit, that you're not always going to ride at the same cadence, and certainly climbing is going to take place at a lower cadence. So I try to sprinkle in, even within the context of a single workout, and then sometimes an entire workout, the climbing drills. And I call them climbing drills because they're specifically not necessarily out of the saddle, but they take place at a lower RPM range, 75 to 85 typically. So right around 80 RPM, because I do recognize the specificity of turning out big watts at lower cadences on climbs. I mean, even if you're geared for it, you may not want to spin. It may not make sense for you to spin at 90 RPM. So all the workouts shouldn't be that way. I absolutely do recognize that lower RPMs suit climbs. And then as far as, I wouldn't even waste my time with a deep dive on this topic, because it's such a contentious and just one study refutes another almost directly. And then there's all these gradations of just, it makes my head explode. I have my research topics compartmentalized into all these different folders under different topics and subtopics and whatnot. And I just opened up the cadence folder, and it had to be 40 studies. And I started sifting through them, and it was just like, this is a complete waste of my time. Yes, force output is going to influence fiber recruitment, but how often is that meaningful? So if you are grinding along to get up a climb and you have to do it at something that is probably biomechanically more advantageous, but ekes a little more glycogen out of your muscles, of what consequence is that at the end of the day, or at the end of that hill, or even in the context of a race? A lot of times it's probably not even a factor worth concerning yourself with. High cadence can still translate to high force output. So even if you're burning along at 90, 100, 105, if you're really gassing it up a climb, you can still be jamming out huge watts, recruiting those same fibers. And yeah, you're doing it with a high cadence. So that's not helpful. I looked at one study in particular that I will mention, where they had a freely chosen cadence and they subtracted 20 off that freely chosen cadence. So their usual, natural cadence, less 20 during the final minute of the bike, such that when they transitioned on the run, it extended their time to exhaustion. And that panned out for some of them. For some of them, it didn't work at all. The energetic cost, the effect on your heart rate, the muscle stress, the minimizing RPE, all of these things are, some studies look at one, if not all of those things, and try to figure out where the balance lies. Nobody figures it out. I will note that minimizing RPE seems to head the list in terms of optimum cadence studies. So it all comes back to do what feels best, which, so why even overthink it? And brings me to my point, regardless of what the literature says, just choose what works for you, and look at the fact that even the highest level riders range all over the place. You watch a cyclocross race and you'll see people zinging along in a 90, 100 RPM. You'll see some of them grinding out those climbs because they just can't wrap their minds around a cog any bigger than a 28, and they'll just bury themselves and make it work at the highest level. Sprinters can choose lower cadences during the, when they're hiding in the field so that they have a stronger end of race snap, but it doesn't translate across all sprinters. And then multi-sport athletes, a lot of the time I see the argument that they favor lower cadences so that they can preserve their running turnover, while others actually favor a higher cadence so that they can mimic their running cadence. So again, there's just nothing that's so conclusive as to say there's a proper cadence to seek out. Rather, kind of do what works best for you.
Cadence is like, there are some people who are so dogmatic about it, right? Have you ever experienced that? Where some people have pulled me aside at races and talked literally 30 minutes about why we should train people to do high cadence all the time. And just, I think it's usually generational too. There's some generations who don't care. There's other generations who very much care. Like they learned one way, or like maybe when they were coming up, there was like, that was the thing. And they've kind of stuck with that through. Not everyone. This is not like, I'll say this is like 2% of less than 1% of cyclists, you know what I mean? But some people though, they live and die by like, cadence is the thing that will make you faster. But to Chad's point, one, there's evidence all over, the top pros do it all different ways, and studies show all different ways too. There's not like something where training more makes you faster, right? Versus not training. That's pretty definitive, is if you train, you're going to get faster than not training.
One tendency that we do see is with newer athletes, they tend to spin at a lower cadence. And even at a point where it's like it's not healthy or productive, because they may be, they haven't had time to really focus on technique or anything else yet. They may be pushing too hard of a gear, too much force for the amount of speed they have. They could reduce some of that force, increase the speed, still keep the same power, but possibly, not do so much damage to joints or anything else. Now, that said, when you're becoming an experienced cyclist, and I've been an advocate for this, I like to be proficient at a wide range of cadences, because in different races, different scenarios will be presented, and I want to be prepared for that. Now, that doesn't mean that I am super strict and it's like I spend this amount of time in this cadence and that sort of thing, but I allow myself to vary my cadence. Sometimes it makes intervals more interesting too. Like if you have like a 20-minute interval and you're going through it, maybe break it up into 4 chunks of 5 minutes and do a different cadence for each of those 5 minutes chunks that you do. Chad does that all the time in workout text that we have. So it's really, I think, just like cadence, I view it like a filter through which you pass your power, right? You can change that filter, but it's still going to be the same power. The more you're used to putting out power at a high cadence, the better you'll be at it. And same thing with low cadence. So I just want to be prepared for all of it. So that's why I train a little bit of all. Amber, are you similar?
I was just going to say, you took the words right out of my mouth. I would say it's worth training a range, especially if you haven't worked at high cadences before. It's worth working on that. You might find that it's really beneficial. We were joking earlier about, the 75 cadence being my choice of cadence for the future. That is where I feel most comfortable. It's not where I perform the best. And so one thing that was very beneficial to me was training at a higher cadence, because what I found was once I got comfortable at the higher cadence, I actually performed better at a higher cadence. But of course, that was dependent on gearing and terrain. So was I going to spend at 105 cadence up a really steep climb? No, but it was a beneficial tool for me to have available when it made sense to apply it. So I think it's worth training the full range. And if when you're outside, you're in a hilly area where it's difficult to train a higher cadence, then focus on the higher cadence work when you're on the trainer. And then that way, when you do encounter terrain that's a little bit flatter, you can experiment with that and see what works for you. But I think it's worth experimenting, because if you only stick with what you're comfortable at and you don't train that range or you don't try it, then you don't have an opportunity to see if something else might work better for you. And maybe it doesn't, but at least then you know for sure.
Absolutely. All right. We have just, we'll do one live question here because it was asked a few times in the live chat. I've heard Pete mention several times, is he by chance coming back soon? No, but we still, and I'm sorry, listeners, but we still have contact with Pete individually, some of us. So we'll mention him on the podcast, and I hope that
forever.
Yeah. So I hope we're not dangling Pete in front of you and you can't have that connection with Pete. You can always go find him on Instagram. He's not very active there. He may not respond to messages and stuff, but yeah, he's doing really well for those that are asking on that. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining us on this episode. I can't believe my voice made it through. Fantastic. Really happy about that. Hey, thanks. Yeah. And thank you everybody for tuning in live on YouTube. Once again, subscribe. There's a notification bell that you can hit so that you don't miss new videos. Producer Maxine doesn't just produce this podcast. She produces a lot of videos as well. She cuts out the best parts of this podcast and puts it on our YouTube channel. So you should all go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. That's one of the best things you can do to help us. Go to TrainerRoad.com, sign up, build a plan, get faster, use adaptive training. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.